Okay, so last week we started chapter 6, and chapter 6 was about waiting for the coming of Mashiach. And we were talking about what does that mean to wait for the coming of Mashiach. And basically, we saw that the Rambam is very explicit about this, that it's not enough to believe in Mashiach. We actually have to await his coming. And if somebody doesn't, then he's considered to be a kafir. And I just wanted to look at a couple of the some of the footnotes in the last bit that we did in our last class, and then we'll go and continue on. So we mentioned again in our last class that there's this concept then, because we have to wait for Mashiach. Waiting for Mashiach is not waiting for an era; it's waiting for a person. Okay? And therefore, this belief in Mashiach is really because we're waiting for a person. We have to wait for this person, and it's about a bus of Adam. Okay, and therefore there has to be this sort of connection with Melech Mashiach. And we've explained it before, that a king is someone who is accepted baratzai. So it's something that people want, and people willingly coronate a king over them. So in the same thing, when we talk about Mashiach, we're talking about a person that we willingly want to connect to. And we mentioned the idea that even in Golos, when we don't know clearly who Mashiach is, we still are awaiting a person to be Megala, right? We're connecting ourselves to a human being and considering it's going to be a human being who's going to be Melech Mashiach, who's going to take us out of this Golos. So I just want to point out something at the bottom, and therefore, like the Rambam says in his Parashah Mishnayos, that believing in Mashiach and awaiting his coming is this idea that we talk about his greatness, we love him, we daven for him, etc. So I just want to look on this bottom. You'll see here when it talks about this idea of our awaiting Mashiach. See in footnote number 9. It says here, "Al pi bir zu," based on this understanding, and what understanding are we talking about? So if we go back up here, you'll see that this is where we're saying that the tzipiyah of coming of Mashiach is really a personal connection of every single Jew in all the generations with this image, right? This personality of a person of Melech Mashiach. And that has been the hope through all the years. So based on that, Al pi bir zeh, Yuvnu divrei haRebbe, how you doing? Based on this, we will understand the words of the Rebbe, the very famous Sicha of Beis Nisan Tafshim Mem Ches. That was when I was going to the chuppah. It's my wedding. It was Gimel Nisan, was that night. So the Sicha, when the Rebbe said there, we're talking about this concept of Yechi HaMelech. So then, but according to what we're saying now, is B'nagel Tefila ala Geula b'achratas ad Masai. When the Rebbe was talking about, we were saying when we daven about the Geula, right? Until that point, it was this crying out of ad Masai. Until when? That when we are calling out the idea of ad Masai, until when, included in that proclamation, in a sense, is this idea of coronating the king. That's what Yechi HaMelech is about. ad Masai, and like we said before, that this announcement of ad Masai, this calling out until when, is not just a yearning, a general yearning for a future that's going to be better. Really, what it's reflecting is our eternal connection with Beis David. And that is really what this idea of coronating a king is all about. As again, like we said before, we talked about what is the role of a king, right? A king represents the kingdom of Hashem for the Jewish people. He represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A king has to be willingly anointed and coronated, and that's what it's about. So when we say the concept of Yechi HaMelech, or crowning the king, or crowning Mashiach, is this idea of Hiskashus HaAm HaMelech. It's showing that the nation is connecting itself to the king. Ella, Shebezman HaGolos, She'ein Begolim Melech Mi Beis David, because we find in the times of David HaMelech, if you look in David HaMelech, in Shmuel, you'll see that when David was coronated, this was a call. This is what they proclaimed: Yechia Melech David, Elam Vad, that David will live on forever. So now, in the time of Gullus, when we don't have, it's not clear, we don't have a revealed Melech from Beis David. So you could say that this connection and this coronation is reflected or expressed just in this yearning of Ad Masai. Okay, that's how it was. But as we get closer to the Geula, and the Rebbe told us, if we look at the Sichos of Nun Aleph Nun Beis, that we already have a Melech Beis David here. Then this eternal hiskashus that we're supposed to have with Mashiach, that through all the generations was a connection to the personality of Mashiach and this hope that he would come and appear. Now it's more about an expression of gathering around the Melech and crowning him as our king, right? Accepting the fact that he is our king. And that's what the Rebbe was saying in that Beis Nisan Tashmim Ches, that this proclamation of Ad Masai is now becomes a proclamation of Yechi HaMelech. Because Ad Masai reflects just this yearning for Mashiach to come. But once we know that we have Melech Mashiach from Beis David, now it's about Yechi HaMelech. Okay. So that's one point I wanted to bring out that was in our footnote from last time. And then what we said after that just like if a Jew comes along and says he believes in Hashem, but he wants nothing to do with the mitzvahs, he's considered to be like a kafir. So too, a person who says that he doesn't want Mashiach to come, in other words, he believes that Mashiach will come, but he doesn't necessarily want him to come, he too is called a kafir. Now, again, there's a footnote here, an interesting point about what we mean when we say a kafir. And remember that we also mentioned this idea that at the end of the day, we said that this person who says, I don't want Mashiach, I believe, but I don't necessarily want him. We said that he's missing the foundation of Yiddishkeit, the foundation of the idea that we have to want and choose the king, or choose Hashem in his mitzvahs. And he's also denying the true Ratzon that actually he also has, which is the fact that he writes Eliyas Misrael, but he writes Elasais Kol Mitzvahs. That a Jew really wants to be part of the Jewish people, every Jew, and really wants to do the mitzvahs. And we mentioned in passing that this is, of course, what the Rambam says in terms of a get. So I'd like to look down again at the footnote here. This idea that every single Jew wants to be part of the Jewish nation and really wants to do the right thing. So we see, the Rambam says, of course, in Hilchos Gerushin Hanal, Mash Zeu Klal B'Chol Yisrael. So the Rambam writes, okay, it's in regard to a get, but when the Rambam says it, it means it really applies to all the Jewish people. Shekol Yehudi, B'Chol Matzav, writes Eliyas Yisrael, that every single Jew, in every situation, really wants to be part of the Jewish nation. Ach Muvan, Shah Rambam Sham Medaber Al Ratzon Pnimi. What self-understood there, because we're talking about in Hilchos Gerushin about a man who doesn't want to give his wife a get, okay? And what can be done to make him want, okay? So the Rambam, when he says, well, really, you can even hit him until he says he wants, is talking about a Ratzon Pnimi, saying that really inside, this person wants to do the right thing. It could very well be, that there's an inner ratzon to do the right thing, and it could very well be that ratzon is being covered up and it's hidden with all these other desires that the person might have. Exactly in the situation that the Rambam is talking about there, or a man who doesn't want to give the get to his wife, even though the Basin has directed him to do so. Binim says, so what that comes out of the Rambam's words there, then that means in our case here too, a person who says, okay, I believe in Hashem, but I don't necessarily want to do his mitzvahs. I don't want Hashem's kingdom over me. All that really is he's denying the emes. He's denying really what's going on inside. He's denying his true ratzon. Therefore, even though he says such a thing, we still say, even a Jew who sins is still called Bnei Yisrael. Because any Jew, no matter what he says, even a Jew who says wants to schmatz, down inside, he's a Jew, because deep inside that Ratzon Panimi is always something he wants to be a nation of part of the Jewish people, and he wants Hashem's machos. But since he's not acknowledging it publicly or in a revealed way, that's why it's called kfira. And this is in general what we talk about when we say emuna, belief. Again, Hasidus explains, right? Every single yid has a pintli yid. Every single yid has a neshama, and of course that neshama believes in Hashem Echad. There's no other way for that neshama, right? Could very well be. Jew could be in a situation where this emunah that he has, mitzvah and neshama, is hidden, and the Jew could deny this belief, right? And that's the idea. A Jew comes along and says, "I'm an atheist." Well, a Jew can't be an atheist. An atheist is a very external label they're sticking on themselves, but every Jew has a neshama. So he could be called a kaifer if he's denying Hashem, right? But so even if he outwardly says, "I don't believe," the truth is that he does, right? It's there, it's inside of him. He really does. Okay, so why we talk about this idea of a kaifer? If you look at 13 here, because generally a person, when we say it comes a kaifer, it's something where they're using their mind in the wrong way. Okay, so generally, we talk about a kaifer, you're talking about a person who denies, like he's using his seichel, not usually something that is connected to ratzon or feeling. Okay. But we could say that even though generally when we talk about a kaifer, you're talking about someone who's denying like the logic or using his seichel, the fact that the Rambam uses the kaifer here when he says anyone who doesn't believe in Mashiach, right? In other words, he believes it, but he doesn't necessarily want it to come. The Rambam considers him part of that he's under that category of someone who's not actually waiting for Mashiach. And why is this important? Okay, so we come to this idea of tonight, because we want to understand, just like we said earlier on, we said we're waiting for Mashiach. What does this mean? When a person is waiting for Mashiach or he's yearning, what is the extent of that? Okay, what do I have to believe in and what do I have to wait for to be able to fulfill this that the Rambam is saying? It's part of one of the Yud Gimel Ikrim that you have to believe in Mashiach and you have to await his coming. So what is included in this idea of awaiting Mashiach? Would someone else like to take over?
Anyone wants to read? I don't mind, but I would love to hear someone else. Okay, I'll start, and anyone if you could read, just put in the chat or just open your mic. Shir HaTzipiyah. V'alpiza efshar l'hamshich v'lespanin v'lenasis l'hagris shir HaTzipiyah l'Mashiach shemulchrach liyas etzel kol achad miYisrael. So according to this, we could try to like define how much, like what is the amount of anticipation for Mashiach that every Jew must have. ושני פרטים בזה, מה צריך לכלול הציפייה, ועד כמה היא צריכה להיות עמוקה בנפשו של יהודי. So here we have the two details. One is what is included in the anticipation, what does it entail, and how deep does he have to feel it. בנגיע לעניין הראשון, מובן על פי הנ"ל, שבימי המשיח יהיו עניינים רבים ונפלאים, מעדן מצויים כעפר ועד למעלה ארץ דרך השם כמיים למחסים. הנה כשהרמב"ם כסף שצריך להיות מחק לביאסה, הוא אינו מזכיר כל עניינים אלו. So according in connection to the first detail of what do we need to anticipate? Even though the days of Mashiach will include many wonderful things, for example, delicacies will be found as dust, and the whole world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem as water covers the ocean. But the Rambam does not say that we need to wait for those things. He doesn't mention those things when he says we need to wait for him. So according to this, we can understand that the anticipation that we must have is only for whatever the Rambam mentioned before this, before he says that if you don't believe or wait for him, then you're denying. And what is that? What do we must believe? So what we're waiting for is for Mashiach to return the Malchus of Beis David and return all the mitzvahs. So whoever anticipates this is included in the nation of Hashem and his servants who are anticipating the revelation of Hashem's kingdom over them. Even if he doesn't anticipate the rest of the voice of Beulah. On the other hand, if someone is not anticipating Mashiach becoming king and returning all the mitzvahs, but he's looking forward to many other wonderful things that will happen when Mashiach comes, then he is removing himself, so to speak, from the Jewish people. But again,
that's quite an extraordinary statement if you think about it, right? So if it's not the focus on mitzvahs, then it's not this yearning. So if it's about, oh, a person can't wait till we're all going to be in Eretz Yisrael again, that's not it. We can't wait because there's be no sickness again. There'll be no sickness. There'll be peace in the world. That's not it. That's not awaiting Mashiach. So true, there will be all those wonderful things, but that is not the obligation that every Jew has to believe. So if I don't have the Ikar, I can have the Ikar and anticipate that plus. But if I don't have that Ikar, then this is quite strong. The Rambam considers him to be someone who's taking himself out of the Jewish people.
Right. I mean, I think most people want, it's not like people don't want Mashiach to be king and don't want to do the mitzvahs. Just when people think of Mashiach's coming, usually there's a lot of other things that come up first, I guess.
And for myself, I've always wondered, when the Rebbe said, if there only be 10 people who really wanted Mashiach, right? And it always puzzled me. It's like there were thousands of people in 770, right? Screaming Ad Masai, right? And then later screaming Yechin. And the Rebbe saying, if only there were 10 people who really wanted Mashiach. And sometimes I think, well, maybe it was about this idea, because people's want or desire for Mashiach wasn't the Ikar desire, whether it was because they didn't learn, they didn't know, which is why, the Rebbe said, Nyani Gol Mashiach is such a crucial thing, because everyone thinks about, the times of Mashiach, all the other wonderful things. We're going to have a Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so they're yearning for the Beis Hamikdash. They're learning to be back in Eretz Yisrael. They're learning for whatever it might be, all the wonderful things, but that's not the Ikar. So in my mind, once I learned this, was like, maybe it's only my ideas here, but maybe this is when the Rebbe said, 10 people who really want Mashiach for the right reasons, right?
And it has to be it really resonates, because that's the only way to explain it. Meaning there are people that really want Tchias HaMesim of a certain loved one, and like the woman who came to the Rebbe was crying. She was very sincere that she wants to see her son. There's no question about it. And of course, there's more than 10 people who have sincerely wanted, an escape or a solution to certain, pain that they were experiencing. So it's definitely, it has to be that the Rebbe meant something about, wanting Mashiach, the essence of what Mashiach is. ובנגיע לעניין השני, תמידיס ועמק הציפייה מצאנו את דברי הרבה. So in connection to the second inyan, which is how deep and how constant, or is that two separate things, constant and deep? Then this
No, that's the same thing, because that was the second
how
point,
deep.
which was about how deep does it have to be in our soul?
Okay.
How deeply ingrained does this tzipiyah have to be?
Right. By the way, it's about like saying how deep. It just reminded me. Also, the rabbi used the word MS, and MS is something that's constant. You know, just that word tmidius reminded me of that's a way to know which Mashiach are we waiting for, because if it's something that's not constant, meaning we want it when we're in pain or when we're scared, then that, it's, I'm not saying it's not real, but yeah, if we're wanting the Hashem to be king and and Mashiach to be how do you say it, the Malchus of David to return and the mitzvahs, then why would that change with time? That would be something constant, because we don't have ups and downs over there. Because the belief in Mashiach is something constant. So the obligation to await the coming of Mashiach is also a constant obligation. A Jew has to constantly wait and anticipate Mashiach. As we say in davening, I await, because we await your salvation the entire day. When someone mentions something connected to Mashiach, even if he's saying it by the way, he can't remain silent about it. Adish probably means like neutral or okay, so he right away, like it wakes up his feeling, his yearning for Mashiach to come. And the fizim of our rabbis, Rambam Melchas Paraduma, Shakasav Adis Tesha Paris, Shanasim Isman, Maishabai, Korban Sheni, Messiah Nasiris Yasa, Mashiach, Mehiri, Yigala Amin, Kini Ratzan. And according to this, the Rebbe explains the words of the Rambam when he talks about Paraduma. That even though he's writing halachas, right? And he's talking about the 9 cows that we already had from Moshe Rabbeinu until the korban of the second Beit Hamikdash, and he ends off that the 10th one Mashiach will prepare, and right away with the tefillah, may he quickly be revealed. May that be the will of Hashem. So even though it's like by the way, right? He's trying to just explain about Paraduma, but he can't mention Mashiach without right away feeling this great yearning for him to immediately come. So because this is a sefer halacha, the Rambam is teaching us halacha here, how much we need to wait for him. That even when the topic of Mashiach comes up, by the way, the in acher, has to immediately awaken in the Jew tefillah, a prayer that he should immediately be revealed. Move on. So it's understood simply that the meaning here is not that a Jew has to think the entire day about his desire for Mashiach and to be busy with it. It's not an obligation to think about it, but that he always wants it. And that's why the second you mention Mashiach, even by the way, it immediately awakens with him this desire, which he already has constantly. But it could be that it's not constant in his thoughts, but it's constant in his heart, in his neshama. so we can see this with the mashal of the desire for the nation for the king, that even though the nation always wants the king, but he's not busy the whole day thinking and speaking about the king. But only in the time when he's coronating the king. That's when his desire is revealed and he's announcing like long live the king and bowing before him. That's interesting about bowing. Did everyone bow to the Jewish kings?
That's what it says here.
What?
Yeah, they bowed to David HaMelech.
Just we haven't ever experienced bowing, so it sounds like not familiar. But afterwards, everyone goes and does their own thing. And this desire for the king is hidden. Only when you remind him of the king, then the desire is revealed in his thoughts and in his heart. So I think there's a lot of like examples for this. So just what's in my mind now is the desire, for example, like say someone wants to, for me, it was when I wanted to get pregnant. So I could get distracted, but the second you see or hear anything connected to pregnancy or babies, so it right away awakens that desire and that feeling. Or if someone, whatever it is that someone wants, there's countless examples. So yeah, it's always in your heart, but it doesn't mean that you can't get distracted. The fact that you're distracted doesn't mean that right now you don't want it anymore, or you don't really care anymore. Okay, is that it? But that's only the minimum like requirement for anticipating Mashiach, that at least if someone mentions Mashiach and you don't feel anything, then that would not be a good sign. But the true idea of awaiting the coming of Mashiach is much deeper than that, the common practice line, as we'll explain later.
Okay. So thank you so much. You have to go, Rifki?
Yeah. But how about everyone else? We could continue and I'll catch up on the recording.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next pit, and this is going to be, it's a short parak. So now we come to the point of Ein Chiyuv L'Chakar L'Bias Mashiach. Like we said in our last chapter about that there was no mitzvah to believe in Mashiach. We now see again Ein Chiyuv L'Chakar L'Bias Mashiach. The same thing. There's no mitzvah. There's no obligation to wait for Mashiach coming. Liba, would you like to take over?
Yes.
Thank you.
והנה לאל פרק ה' נתבאר שאין חיוב וציווי בתורה להאמין בביאת המשיח. Okay, so we explain in the 5th chapter there is no chiyuv, there is no obligation to, there's no mitzvah in the Torah to believe in Mashiach. כשם שאין חיוב להכיר במציאות השם ובשאר עיקרי האמונה. Exactly, like we don't have obligation to recognize Hashem's reality, and also there's no obligation to believe in the other main fundamental of believing Hashem, in the Torah and Hashem. כי עניינים אלו אי אפשר לצוות עליהם, because on those matters you cannot command, אלא היהודי מצד עצמו מכיר באמיתתם. But every Yid, from his essence, he knows the truth of those principles. ומהכרה זו, הוא בא להכרה במחויבות שלו לקיום ציווי השם בתרי"ג המצוות. And because of this knowledge, he comes to know that he is obligated to do the mitzvahs, and that he is obligated to doing the תרי"ג mitzvahs. ולכן אינם נחשבים בכלל המצוות הפרטיות, אלא כיסוד עליו עומדות כל המצוות. And because of that, it's not considered as a specific mitzvah, but it's the basic, the fundamental that on it, all the mitzvahs are standing. ובדרך זו מבאר הרבי דיוק לשון הרמב"ם שכתב בלשון שלילית, וכל מי שאינו מאמין בו או מי שאינו מחכה לביאתו, כופר בתורה ובמשה רבינו. So with this, the Rebbe explains why the Rambam speaks in a negative language. Whoever doesn't believe, whoever doesn't wait for the coming of Mashiach, is the kofer in the Torah in Moshe Rabbeinu. ולא כתב שצריך וחייבים להאמין. And he didn't write in a positive way that we have a need to believe. כיוון שאכן אין כאן חיוב, אלא שמי שאינו מאמין, הרי הוא כופר ומתכחש לאמת. So it's not an obligation, but whoever doesn't believe, he is a kofer and he is denying the truth. ועל פי זה אפשר להבין שכן הוא גם בענייננו בנוגע לציפייה לביאת המשיח. So we can understand also based on that also in our matter that we're talking about anticipating Mashiach, it's the same thing. שאין זה נכון לומר שישנו ציווי וחיוב לחכות לביאת המשיח, אלא זהו עניין שמתבקש מהיהודי מצד עצמו. So it's not true to say that there is an obligation to wait for Mashiach and anticipate Mashiach, but it's a matter that it comes from itself. It's
like self-understood.
Self-understood that every Yid has to believe. מצד עצם מהותו. Okay, from his essence, it's self-understood that he's believing in those things, and waiting for Mashiach. מהותו של יהודי היא שהוא חלק מעם השם ועבדיו, ולכן הוא רוצה במלכות השם עליו ועל כל העולם. ולכן רוצה בביאת המשיח תכף ומיד. So the essence of a Yid that he is part of Hashem from Am Israel, from Hashem's nation, and from his avadim, slaves, and that's why he wants the Hashem in Hashem's kingdom on him and on all the world, and that's why he wants that Mashiach should come immediately. ולכן, כאשר יהודי טוען שאינו מחכה לביאת המשיח, אין זה שהוא מתחמק מהחיוב המוטל עליו, אלא זוהי כפירה והתכחשות למהותו האמיתית. So that's why if a Yid said that he doesn't anticipate Mashiach, so it's not that he's only, I don't know how to say, מתחמק, he doesn't do his, what?
Absolving himself.
Okay, he's not only absolving himself from the what he has for his obligation, but he's a kofer to his real essence.
Exactly.
He's denying.
Okay. Yeah, like we said before, we know there are things, the Ratzon Hamiti, the Pnimi, every Jew wants what Davisha wants. It could be that on the outside is something different. So the Sikkim, now we'll come to the Sikkim of the entire chapter. Go ahead.
הרמב"ם קבע את הציפייה לביאת המשיח כיסוד באמונה. So the Rambam stated that anticipating Mashiach, it's a base, it's a fundamental in our belief. ויש לומר הטעם לכך, we can explain it, what's the reason for that? כיוון שהקשר של ישראל והקדוש ברוך הוא נמשל לעם המקבלים עליהם את מלכותו של המלך בבחירה ורצון. Because our connection from Am Yisrael and the Eibashter is it's like a nation and a king, and the nation they are accepting from their own how you say bchira?
Choice.
From the choice and from their own rotzen, how you say it? Will, okay. וכמאמר, מלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם. And like it says in davening, we accepted Hashem's kingdom with a will. ולכן יהודי אמור לבחור ולרצות בביאת המשיח, שאז תתגלה מלכותו יתברך על ישראל והעולם כולו. That's why a Yid is supposed to choose and to want the coming of Mashiach, because then the kingdom of Hashem will be revealed upon Am Yisrael and the whole world. כאשר יהודי מתכחש לרצונו בביאת המשיח, הרי הוא מתכחש לרצונו בגילוי מלכות השם, ובזה הוא מוציא את עצמו מכלל ישראל. And that's why when a Yid denies his wish for coming of Mashiach, so he's denying his will that Hashem will be discovered, the kingdom of Hashem will be discovered, and that's how he's taking himself out of the klal of Am Yisrael. מכך מובן שהציפייה לביאת המשיח אינה רק ציפייה למצב שישרור אז בעולם. So from that we understand that anticipating Mashiach, it's not only anticipating the situation that will be in the world then, אלא גם ובעיקר ציפייה לאיש שיופיע וימלוך עלינו, מחכה לביאתו. But it's also and mainly anticipating the person that will come, that will show up and will be our king. That's what it says, we're waiting for his coming. וציפייה זו היא בעצם ההתקשרות של כל אחד מישראל בכל הדורות עם מלך המשיח, לב קהל ישראל. And this anticipation is the discussion, the essence of discussions of every Yid in all the generations with the מלך המשיח, that he is the heart of עם ישראל. הציפייה למשיח צריכה להיות עניין תמידי, לישועתך קיווינו כל היום. Anticipating Mashiach has to be the whole time. Like we said in davening, that we are waiting for your salvation the whole day. אך לכאורה אין הכוונה שמוכרח להיות עסק תמידי במחשבה ודיבור אודות הציפייה, but it doesn't mean that we have to wait, or we have to be engaged the whole day, the whole time with thinking and talking about anticipating of Mashiach, אלא שהרצון הפנימי בביאת המשיח הוא תמידי, גם כשבמחשבה ודיבור האדם עסוק בעניינים אחרים. But the anticipation has to be inner wish and inner will to want to have that Mashiach will come the whole time. This has to be the whole time constant, even when we talk and think about other things. But the inner wish and the constant thinking, constant wish has to be there. Yeah? אין מצווה לצפות לביאת המשיח, כיוון שהציפייה לביאת המשיח אינה חובה פרטית בתורה, אלא עניין כללי המהווה יסוד של כל התורה כולה. Okay, so that's why it's not a certain mitzvah that we have to anticipate Mashiach, because the anticipation of Mashiach is not something specific in the Torah, but it's a general thing that is fundamental in the whole Torah.
That's it. Yashkayach. Thank you so much. And I think
Thank
we're going to
you.
stop here. This is the end of the chapter. And Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll look at the iyunim of this chapter.
Okay. Next week will be on Tuesday or Wednesday, do you know? Or
I think it's Tuesday. Tonight it was just that Rifki had a problem with tonight. She
Okay.
couldn't do so. Mitzvah Hashem.
Okay, very good. But as well